Good morning, everybody. We have another chapter of Princess and the Goblin today, chapter 14. We read most recently about the Cobb's creatures last week, and also about Curdy's plan when he goes through the mines. Do you remember what he does to make sure he doesn't get lost? That's right. Thread that he has attached to this pickaxe, and he finds his way through the mines, and he's able to get right back out. So today we're going to hear a little chapter called That Night Week, getting back to Irene in this chapter. So if you have your book, you can follow along on page 101. Today I'm just going to be reading without presenting my screen. So let's begin. During the whole of the week, Irene had been thinking every other moment of her promise to the old lady, although even now she could not feel quite sure that she had not been dreaming. Could it really be that an old lady lived up in the top of the house with pigeons and a spinning wheel and a lamp that never went out? She was, however, nonetheless determined. On the coming Friday, remember that's when she was told she needed to come back to her grandmother, to ascend the 3 stairs, walk through the passages with the many doors, and try to find the tower in which she had either seen or dreamed her grandmother. Her nurse could not help wondering what had come to the child. She would sit so thoughtfully silent, and even in the midst of a game with her, would so suddenly fall into a dreamy mood. But Irene took care to betray nothing, whatever efforts Ludi might make to get at her thoughts. And Ludi had to say to herself, "What an odd child she is," and give it up. At length, the longed-for Friday arrived, and lest Ludi should be moved to watch her, Irene endeavored to keep herself as quiet as possible. In the afternoon, she asked for her doll's house, and went on arranging and rearranging the various rooms and their inhabitants for a whole hour. Then she gave a sigh and threw herself back in her chair. One of the dolls would just not sit, and another would not stand, and they were all very tiresome. Indeed, there was one would not even lie down, which was too bad. But it was now getting dark, and the darker it got, the more excited Irene became, and the more she felt it necessary to be composed. "I see you want your tea, Princess," said the nurse. "I will go and get it. The room feels close. I will open the window a little. The evening is mild, it won't hurt you." "There's no fear of that, Ludi," said Irene, wishing she had put off going for the tea till it was darker, when she might have made her attempt with every advantage. So, opening the window, she wants to go see her grandmother. Now, I fancy Ludi was longer in returning than she had intended, for when Irene, who had been lost in thought, looked up, she saw that it was nearly dark. And at the same moment, she caught sight of a pair of eyes, bright with a green light, glowering at her through the open window. Remember, it's nighttime. The next instant, something leaped into her room. It was like a cat with legs as long as a horse's, Irene said, but its body was no bigger and its legs no thicker than those of a cat. "What is it?" That's right, one of the Cobb's creatures. She was too frightened to cry out, but not too frightened to jump from her chair and run from the room. Where should she go? We'll see where she goes. Now, it's plain enough to every one of my readers what she ought to have done. She should have gone to her grandmother, right? Or she should do that now, especially since she was going to go up there tonight anyway. And indeed, Irene thought of it herself, but when she came to the foot of the old stair, just outside the nursery door, she imagined the creature running up those long ascents after her and pursuing her through the dark passages, which, after all, might lead to no tower. Remember, she's had that happen before when she tries to go and she can't find it. That thought was just too much. Her heart failed her. In turning from the stair, she rushed along to the hall, whence, finding the front door to the house open, she darted into the court, pursued, at least she thought so, by the creature. No one happening to see her, on she ran, unable to unable to think because of her fear, and ready to run anywhere to elude the awful creature with the stilt legs. Not daring to look behind her, she rushed straight out of the gate and up the mountain. It was foolish indeed, thus to run farther and farther from all people who could help her. Also, she's outside at nighttime. There was one creature after her, but now there could be way more. As if she had been seeking just a fit spot for the goblin creature to eat her in at his leisure. But that is the way fear serves us. It always sides with the things that we are afraid of. Now, the princess was soon out of breath with running uphill, but she ran on, for she fancied the horrible creature just behind her, forgetting that, had it been after her, such long legs as those must have overtaken her long ago. At last she could run no longer and fell, unable even to scream, by the roadside, where she lay for some time half dead with terror. But finding nothing lay hold of her, and her breath beginning to come back, she ventured at length to get half up and peer anxiously about her. Where did that cat go, that strange cat? It was now so dark she could see nothing. Not a single star was even in the sky. She could not even tell in what direction the house lay. And between her and her home, she fancied that the dreadful creature lying ready to pounce upon her. Now she saw now that she ought to have run up the stairs at once over to her grandmother. It was well she did not scream, for although very few of the goblins had come out for weeks, a stray idler or two might have heard her. She sat down upon a stone, and nobody but one who had done something wrong could have been more miserable than her. She had quite forgotten her promise to visit her grandmother, so she's not only scared, she feels bad because she realizes she promised to see her grandmother, and she should have gone up immediately. A raindrop fell on her face. She looked up, and for a moment her terror was lost in astonishment. At first, she thought the rising moon had left her place, and drawn nigh to see what could be the matter with the little girl, sitting all alone, without hat or cloak, on the dark bare mountain. But she soon saw she was mistaken, for there was no light on the ground at her feet, and no shadow anywhere. But a great silvery globe was hanging in the air, and as she gazed at the lovely thing, her courage revived. If she were but indoors again, she would fear nothing, not even the terrible creature with the long legs. But how was she to find her way back? How do you think she'll find her way back? Now, what could that light be? She thought. Could it be? No, it couldn't. But what if it should be? Yes, it must be her great-great-grandmother's lamp. Remember that one? That leads the pigeons to her? It guided her pigeons home through the darkest of nights even. So Irene jumped up. She had but to keep that light in view, and she must find the house. Her heart grew strong. Speedily, yet softly, she walked down the hill, hoping to pass the watching creature unseen. Dark as it was, there was little danger now of choosing the wrong road, and, which was most strange, the light that filled her eyes from the lamp, instead of blinding them for a moment to the object upon which they next fell, enabled her for a moment to see it, despite the darkness. For example, here, by looking at the lamp and then dropping her eyes, she could see the road for a yard or two in front of her. So she'd look up at the light, and then even though it's pitch dark everywhere else, she could look down and the road was illuminated. She could see it for a little bit longer. And this saved her from several falls, for the road was very rough. But all at once, to her dismay, it vanished, and the terror of the beast, that cat that was behind her, which had left her the moment she began to return, again laid hold of her heart. She's getting fearful again and not paying attention to following that light. Now, the same instant, however, she caught the light of the windows and knew exactly where she was. It was too dark to run, but she made what haste she could and reached the gate in safety. She found the house door still open, ran through the hall, and without even looking into the nursery, bounded straight up the stairs and the next and the next, then, turning to the right, ran through the long avenue of silent rooms and found her way at once to the door at the foot of the tower stairs. When first the nurse missed her, she fancied she was playing her a trick, and for some time took no trouble about her. But at last, getting frightened, she had begun to search. And when the princess entered, the whole household was hither and thither over the house hunting for her. A few seconds after Irene reached the tower, the stair of the tower, they had even begun to search for the neglected rooms, in which they would never have thought of looking had they not already searched every other place they could think of in vain. But by this time already, as everybody's searching every part of the house, she had already reached the old lady's door. So she is at the door of her grandmother's room. Do you think she'll find her this time? So we'll see in our next chapter. The next chapter's title is Woven and Then Spun. Woven and Then Spun. Does spinning or spun make you think of anything? Make you think of what grandmother Irene was maybe spinning? We'll see. So that's all we'll be doing for today. You've got a few questions to answer on Bright Thinker, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.